Hey there, Angular folks, and welcome back. Angular Material Dialogs can now bind directly to component inputs, outputs, and model inputs. So in this tutorial, we'll take one reusable component and make it work both inline and inside a dialog. Let's check it out. Here we've got this simple account preferences page, and right here we have a notification settings component. This component is showing a message for this user, Alex Morgan, and then we have a slide toggle for email notifications. Right now, the toggle is enabled, so let's turn this off. Now I'll click the Save button, and now we can see the last saved payload. So the component emitted a save event, and the parent component received the user ID and the current enabled value. Now let's toggle it back on, then I'll hit Save again. And now the payload updates accordingly. So far, this is just normal Angular component communication. The component receives a user, it has an enabled state, and it emits a saved event. Okay, now here we have an Edit in Dialog button. When I click it, we open that same notification settings component inside an Angular Material dialog. Not a separate dialog-specific version. Not a wrapper component just for the modal. This is the same exact component, and inside this dialog, it still knows the user is Alex Morgan. It also has the same email notifications value. Now I'll toggle email notifications off inside the dialog, then I'll click the Save button. And when I close the modal, we can see that the last saved payload changed accordingly. So the dialog component was able to receive data from the parent, keep its model value in sync, and communicate back to the parent when the Save button was clicked. That works because this component has three things. It has an input for the user, it has a model input for the enabled value, and it has an output for the save event. Up until recently, wiring all of that through an Angular Material dialog was not very clean. But now, in Angular 22, we can pass actual component bindings into the dialog. Now, here's the version of the app that we're starting with. This is the app before we add the new dialog bindings. Visually, it looks almost the same. We still have our notification settings component inline on the page, and it all still works exactly the same. The problem is only with the dialog version. The dialog opens, and the component is technically rendering, but notice what's missing. There's no message that says, manage email notifications for Alex Morgan. That's because the user input has not been passed into the dialog component. Also, the email notifications toggle is not synced with the value from the parent. The parent value is currently enabled, but the dialog component doesn't know that because we haven't passed the model value into it either. And if I toggle the control, click Save Settings, and close the dialog, nothing changes in the parent. That's because the parent is not listening to the dialog component's saved output. So let's fix all of this. Here we're looking at the app component template. This is the inline version of our notification settings component. And this is important because this is the component API we want to reuse inside the dialog. First, we have this inputBinding that passes the current user into the notification settings component. Then we have this twoWayBinding. This is binding to the component's model input. So when the parent value changes, the component receives the new value. And when the component updates the value, that change can flow back to the parent. Then we have this outputBinding. So when the notification settings component emits its saved event, the parent calls save notification settings and passes along the emitted payload. And below that, we have our dialog button. When this button is clicked, it calls this open settings dialog function. Now, let's switch to the component TypeScript and look at that function. Here, we have a few signals. First, we have our user signal, In a real application, this user would probably come from an API call, a resource, a store, a service, or something along those lines. But for this demo, we're keeping it simple and hard-coded. Then we have the notification state. This is the value used by the slide toggle. Then, farther down, we have our Open Settings dialog function. We're using Angular Materials mat dialog to open this component in a modal. We're providing a small config object here. So this is not equivalent to the inline usage. Inline, we had an input, model, and output binding. But in the dialog, we currently have none of that. So the dialog component gets created, but doesn't receive any of the necessary data. And the parent doesn't listen when the component emits its saved event. Now, the goal here is not to make the dialog smarter. The goal is to let the dialog use the component's existing API. That's what we're going to fix now. As of Angular 22, Angular Material dialogs can now receive a bindings array in the dialog config. This bindings array lets us pass Angular component bindings to the component that Material renders inside the dialog. And the nice thing is, these bindings line up with the same concepts we already use in templates. For the user input, we'll use inputBinding. The first argument is the input name user. The second argument is the value source, which is our user signal. Then for the saved output, we'll use outputBinding. Again, the first argument is the output name saved. The second argument is the callback that should run when that output emits. So this is conceptually the same as the template binding we already had. We can treat these like a component input and output because that's exactly what they are. Now, let's save this and see how it changed. Let's quickly verify that the inline component still works. I'll toggle email notifications off, then I'll click Save. Now I'll toggle it back on and save again. The payload properly updates to true, so our normal inline component still works the same as before. Now, let's click Edit in Dialog. We can immediately see one improvement. The dialog component now says Manage email notifications for Alex Morgan, so that's good. That means the user input is now being passed into the component inside the dialog. So that binding is working. But there's still a problem. The email notifications toggle inside the dialog is still not synced with the parent value. That's because we have not wired up the model input yet. However, our output binding should now work. Let's go ahead and click the Save button since the toggle is set to false and close the modal. There, the payload has been properly updated. This means the parent did receive the event from the dialog component. So the user input is flowing in and the saved output is flowing out. Now, all that's left is the model binding. Now, inside the bindings array, we're going to add one more binding. This time, we need a two-way binding. The first argument here is the public name of the model input. And the second argument is the writable signal from the parent. This lets the dialog component read the current enabled value when it opens, and when the component updates its model, Angular can write that new value back into the parent signal. Now, let's save this and test the final version. Let's make sure the inline component still behaves correctly. Yep, that all looks good. Nothing broke with the inline usage. Now I'll click Edit in Dialog. And this time, notice the dialog is fully synced. It has the user, so it shows Alex Morgan. And the email notifications toggle matches the current parent value. That means the input binding and the two-way model binding are both working. Now I'll toggle email notifications off inside the dialog. Now I'll click Save Settings and close the modal. Nice. The inline version and the payload have both updated correctly. So now all three communication paths are working. So that's the new Angular Material Dialog Bindings feature. With input binding, output binding, and two-way binding, a dialog component can now use the same API it would use anywhere else. Now, if you're working with modern Angular and want to go deeper, I do have a new Angular Signal Forms course available. It'll help you get comfortable with the new signal-based forms, APIs, and patterns. So check out the link in the description below. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.